Hello, this is Nathan Johanning. I'm Extension Educator with the University of Illinois Extension. I'm out here at the Baebler Educational Farm, which is south of Waterloo, Illinois in the St. Louis Metro East. And I'm here today just to do a little recap of some of our cover crop plots. We had a field day here, back in the late part of March. And cover crops are starting to progress, but now we're in early May. And just wanted to give everyone a quick glimpse of how things look now with some of the different things we have. So to start off with, I want to look at some different rates of cereal rye we planted. So we had rates of 30, 60, 90, and 120 pounds of cereal rye drilled. And these were drilled back on the 8th of November of last year. So starting off here, this is actually our plot with the 30 pounds. So you can see even here, although as we look down in this plot, you can see, not super thick stand, but even at 30 pounds per acre, really nice biomass. Certainly the height from the distance makes it look a little bit thicker than it is, but when you actually look here, you can see as we look actually down at the stand, not a lot of biomass, so something easy to plant into if you're leery about that, but still providing lots of benefits. You can see we're suppressing lots of weeds. We don't have a lot of weedy growth and things here, and pretty clean in the understory. Now if we move on, we go to our 60 pounds per acre. So we step up a little bit. You can see here, again, just looking down at it, biomass does, equivalently get a little bit thicker. So we're getting more biomass, more growth. We've still getting, really good weed suppression, still very manageable to plant into, but giving us some good growth. Then we move on, looking at our 90 pounds, getting a little more robust here. And as you look down, you can see that we're getting a lot denser canopy as we work through here. So getting a lot more biomass as we get in here. So certainly even better weed suppression. And just a quick, as you look, a quick glimpse down in between the rows, we are almost 100% clean of weeds. There might be a few winter annuals here and there, but nothing much at all as far as any mare's tail or summer annuals that you'd find out. You do see, in looking out a little bit, we do have a few cress leaf groundsel, which are most of those yellow flowers you see, which otherwise, if we take a glance off in the distance, you can see are fairly prevalent, not as prevalent as some areas, but certainly we're doing a decent job of suppressing that, although that is one thing that will kind of coexist with cereal rye, especially if it's planted a little bit later. Then our last we have is our 120 pounds. So here, definitely some of our thickest residue and biomass that we have. Note on all these plots, you can see our cover crops do a really good job of picking up nitrogen. So you can see some banding, probably from a previous fertilizer application or something that's getting picked up in some of the differences in biomass that you notice, especially as you look ahead. But looking down in the understory, you can see, at this rate, 120, which is kind of a max of what we would think for a cover crop and almost like a planted stand of rye as far as the density. Certainly thick biomass and stand. So you can just give you a little tutorial of kind of the differences there. Where you should be in this range is probably a lot up to what your goals are. But certainly there's benefits at planting at either of these ranges. So at the bottom line, even if you're wanting something on the economical side, the thought of only spending for 30 pounds per acre drilled, even if it is late in the season, again, this was drilled on the 8th of November, you're getting some good benefits. So I want to kind of complement this with taking a look at just broadcast seeding. So we did a broadcast seeding in this next section, same rye. You can see it's a little shorter. So in the broadcast seeding, it takes a little longer to get things established. This was seeded at approximately 60 pounds per acre surface broadcast over corn stubble. So you can see that we have some differences there in growth, but still suppressing some weeds. That timing difference did slow down our suppression of some of the winter annuals that were already emerging or small. So you can see we have more cress leaf groundsel, maybe a little bit of pennycress in there. However, still, if we look down, Still very clean, no mare's tail, other winter annuals and things like that are suppressed, so we're still gaining a lot of benefit. So one other thing to note that we see sometimes as you look out over in here is you have a really good stand, you don't have it rowed, so you have a little more random distribution whenever you're broadcasting. But I will go back up here as we look right in, say right in here, you can see on this area had stubble that was corn stubble that had been mowed down in a headland. Whereas we walk back in here, we can see we had the standing stubble and had more, didn't have as much residue on the ground. And you can see where I think in this section we got a lot more even and consistent stand broadcasting. So the moral of the story, I think, is if you're going to do anything to your corn stalks, especially on a field scale, going in and having that cover crop spread before that is going to be to your benefit compared with, say, mowing stalks or having them lightly worked and then broadcasting over the top of that. So that's just a little segment of some of the cereal rye work we have. Now here we have another section. This was just a large band that we had some broadcast annual ryegrass. And in this case, you can see it was again around the same time, early November when it was planted. Looking down, you can see we actually have a pretty decent stand of annual ryegrass. Annual ryegrass in the fall is not nearly as competitive, especially surface seeded late like this with our winter annual weeds. So you can see lots of pennycress and other winter annuals in here. But if you look down, you can see we have a pretty consistent stand. And certainly if you look off in the distance, you can see some of the corn stubble where we stopped with that application, and you can see that certainly a good cover in here. Again, not suppressing a lot of winter annuals, but we don't see many summer annuals, not much mare's tail or anything else that's coming up into this so far. So again, some good benefits there, and just something to show even late, broadcasting a little bit of annual ryegrass, certainly some benefit, and lots of benefit to holding the soil and the roots and biomass that's going to be produced. We also here at the Baebler Educational Farm have partnered with the company Covercress. They're working to breed a form of pennycress that can be used as an oilseed crop. So they also had some research out here, and I just wanted to give a quick glance at their variety trial. Those that were at a field day saw the differences in maturity here. So you can see at this point in early May, we are getting to where we're starting to have some things starting to dry down. As you look across this trial, you can see the darker green strips, some little later maturing varieties that haven't quite matured yet, but we have a few, even as we look closely here, that are starting to dry down. So I just wanted to also give a quick glance at what those trials look like compared with what they did earlier. We'll be anxious to see the results from all of this work. Next, I wanted just to briefly visit at some strip trial work that we're going to do looking at soybeans with and without a cereal rye cover crop. So here we had seeded cereal rye and drilled at 70 pounds per acre, and you can see we have 4 replications, so 4 strips with and also without a cover crop that we'll be planting soybeans into and then collecting yield data here. And again, as you can see, be interesting to see how our weed suppression goes. Certainly you can see the difference here between our non-cover crop, what would be there, and the cover crop strip beside it. The last thing I want to talk about today is some of our cover crop strips we did with some different varieties. So these were surface broadcast. They were broadcast on October 26th. And this is just a little recap of what we had from those results. So a lot of these, again, didn't look like a lot because of the late planting until spring. And some of these are also a little bit shorter, maybe not as robust, especially the crimson clover you see here in front of us, compared with something that had been seeded, say, a month or two earlier than that in the fall. So not as much branching and tillering. So that's some predominant differences, but certainly good stand and good survivability. So in this case, this is Dixie Crimson Clover, seeded around 12 pounds per acre broadcast. You can see we're in prime bloom. Everything looks pretty nice. Not a super thick stand, but certainly a lot of benefit there that you can get from that cover crop. On some of the clovers I pulled up earlier had really nice nodulation and nitrogen production from some of those, so that would be another attribute that, while again more beneficial the earlier you get it planted and the more growth you get, still I think you're getting a sizable benefit. And certainly if we zoomed in a little closer, as I was in there earlier, the honeybees and other pollinators were working hard out in those strips. Next we had annual ryegrass. We had the variety ARG1. We had 15 pounds, and then we had 30 pounds, which is, you can see from looking at both of these, not a ton of difference, maybe some subtle differences. The nice thing with a lot of these covers is they really do compensate and branch a fair amount. So just like the cereal rye examples we looked at, the different seeding rates, not a ton of differences that we're seeing. Next, we had a newer variety of annual ryegrass called Lowboy. So it's not as distinct here in the front of the plots due to some other winter annual weedy grasses. But if you go back here in the back, we also had it at around 15 pounds and then around 30 pounds spread. You can see it here. It's this lower growing grass, still not providing a ton of maybe impressive look above the ground. However, really does provide a lot of good biomass. In previous research, it roots just as deeply as the others, so you have a huge fibrous root system on these. That's really their main benefit. So if you're looking for something that doesn't give the overwhelming amount of biomass but still has good capacity to help and hold the soil, Lowboy is a nice annual ryegrass variety. So next, as we move on, we have another annual ryegrass variety called Cold Snap. So again, this variety is again more of a standard height. As you can see, it's pretty easy to kind of see the difference as you look down the center here to the left and right of those as far as their height. So Cold Snap again at around 15 pounds and then around 30 pounds. Again, late in the season broadcast, certainly still providing quite a bit of benefit. Next, we have a combination of that Cold Snap annual ryegrass with Dixie Crimson Clover. So again, you can see here, especially with the clover, probably not as robust as it would be if the clover had been seeded a little earlier, just to some of that branching. But certainly as you look back, we have a nice an incorporation of some crimson clover in amongst some of the annual ryegrass. Next, we have the same thing with our crimson clover, only we have this time mixed it with cereal rye. So in this case, we have a nice blend of cereal rye, and if I step back, we can kind of see some of the crimson clover. It's a little hard to detect in this case because the crimson clover usually doesn't grow quite tall enough to show through the cereal rye, so it tends to be more in the understory, but when they grow up together, they do usually compete and fare fairly well together. Next, we had triticale. So this is a nice comparison right here, looking at triticale, then compared with that cereal rye in that crimson clover mix that was next to it. So you can see the difference in biomass. Certainly a little more bushy in growth habit, and certainly gives you some kind of comparison there. Not as tall, again, more similar in height to wheat, but certainly good biomass produced. We did throw out just a few winter peas whenever we had done the trial. Winter peas generally do not do well broadcast, but we did have a few that did survive. Here you can see one, so and scattered throughout. So again, this would not be something I would do this late or necessarily use as a broadcast with such a large seed. It does fare a lot better drilled, but is something one to see if we could get any growth and survival. I think what we did have germinate did survive and perform fairly well. Next, we will finish up with some more cereal rye. So this is just broadcast Ryman cereal rye. This would be at 60 pounds per acre. And then cereal rye, again Ryman at 120 pounds per acre. So not just a ton of difference in that biomass, especially with that broadcast between maybe not getting all the seeds to survive and then just some of the branching and tillering that goes on. Then looking at our Guardian cereal rye. So here is Guardian at 60 pounds. And then we had Guardian at 120 pounds. So that's just a little snapshot and walkthrough of some of our cover crops here at the Baebler Educational Farm. So hopefully this will give you a little glimpse, even though you may not have a chance to come out as we're in the midst of planting season, but one to give you an opportunity to see some of the work that we had going on and how it looked as we got a little bit later in the season. For this or other information, feel free to contact me. My email address is below, and I'm happy to share other information about the Baebler Educational Farm.